Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it is I, your host, Frankie from USFL Forever YouTube channel. Tonight, we have a special show for you. Special guest that I'll be bringing on in just a couple of minutes. But just to let you know, my regular host, Dirty, is not here today. He's out on some assignment, and we'll just keep it at that. But everybody knows I'm the real host, so it doesn't matter. But I want to welcome you to the Pro Football Alliance show, our usual weekly Tuesday show, seen at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. West Coast for all you California people. But today I want to really kind of touch on a couple of things before we bring on our guests. First of all, as you know, the XFL recently announced that they cut a 5-year deal with Disney and ESPN. I'm obliged to mention that. That's all I'm going to say about that. The USFL season continues. The new USFL, they're in week 6, heading to the second half of the season. And we wish them nothing but the best. Good football lately. And I got the best football mind coming up, our guest. He is actually an author of a book that he wrote, Figure It Out. He also has been in the NFL, has a long coaching career, but talk about being a coach, whether it's special teams, tight ends, assistant coach, whatever, you name it, he's done it. The man has been in the NFL, was in the NFL for 32 years. Not too many people last that long at a company, but this man did. And so let me bring him in now. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the former NFL coordinator for the Colts, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, and New Orleans Saints. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Westhoff. Welcome, Mike, to the show.
Frank, all right, great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Are you happy with the intro?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, you did a good job. You're off and rolling.
Mike, let's start off with how you started your coaching career, because you go way back. And as I can see, you were a graduate assistant in Indiana, and then from there, freshman coach, Dayton. You were offensive line coach, Indiana State, defensive line coach, linebackers coach, Northwestern, 1970 to 1980, offensive line coach, went to Texas Christian, again, offensive line coach. And then from 1982 forward is where your NFL career started. Before we get to that, what did you learn in college that prepared you for the NFL?
That's a good question. When I first started as a college coach, to be honest with you, I played. I went to school on a football scholarship at the University of Wyoming, and then ended up playing at Wichita State. I thought, a pretty good college career. I wasn't a great player, but I started for 3 years. I was captain and most valuable player, so I think I did pretty well. My goal, frankly, to be honest, when I first graduated, was to get my master's degree, emphasis in psychology, and with the idea that I would go to law school, not to be a lawyer, but to end up going into some type of advanced police type work, like the FBI or something like that. That's what I thought I would do. And then when I was at Indiana, I talked with Coach Corso. When Lee Corso hired me there, and I got to be very, very good friends with him and worked with him. And I was in the School of Education, and my emphasis was on psychology. And I just loved it. I fell in love with it, with coaching. And I found out that I could actually maybe do it pretty well. And so then everything changed. And now my focus was, okay, how do I, improve my skills? So my thing was, like with anything else, if you're going to be a teacher, the first thing you better do is learn the subject. You better know what the hell you're talking about. So I studied everything. Now, I was fortunate that I was in the Big Ten. So, I could study Bo Schembechler and study Woody Hayes and, really study good football. So I started doing that. in exposing myself, we had some very good coaches there. Jim Johnson was the defensive coordinator. He became one of the NFL's great defensive coordinators with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so, I learned a lot with these people. I just absorbed. I was like a big sponge. And then I found a way that I believed if you communicated with players on a particular level, you could reach them. And I always was a little bit firm. And sometimes as I got older, I was probably a little hard. But I didn't acquiesce. I had a line that I drew, and I learned that early, and then that set a bar for me. But to me, it was a constant learning process. So even though when I finally entered the NFL, I entered as a complete rookie. I had never coached in the NFL. Oh, I tried. I went to a workout camp with the Dallas Cowboys. So my NFL career as a player probably lasted 3.5 minutes, maybe 4. So then, and I had a great knowledge. I had 2 great coaches that I worked with. Our offensive coordinator, Zeke Bratkowski, remember the old Green Bay quarterback that backed up Bart Starr, and our defensive coordinator, Bud Carson. He's the guy that put the famous Pittsburgh Steelers defense together, and he was a defensive genius. And I spent hours with those 2 guys learning football, just learning skills. I was the tight ends coach. I was the strength coach. And I helped with the offensive line. I was the assistant head coach. Hell, I didn't do any of them very well, but that was my job. And then one day I was out, our first year in 1982 during the strike year, I was out jogging in Towson, Maryland. Frank Bush came along, wanted me to walk with him. We got talking, and he said he was going to fire our special teams coach. He said he just was terrible. He didn't have any confidence in him. He was going to fire him. And I said, I don't know, Frank. I said, the guy's he's got a lot to do. He's trying to help with the defense. I said, let me take it. I'll take it over and let him, well, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing about special teams. I had no notebook. His notebook should have come with crayons. It was the size I ever saw. And here I am with it now. But the fortunate thing for me is we were on strike. So I started to study. And I studied tape and film, and I watched everything I could. And I came up with some philosophies of how I would teach. And that's what got me started. My whole goal was, okay, I'm gonna coach coverage, kickoff coverage, whatever. Well, what do I wanted to mold a type of defense. So I went into Bud Carson. And I said, Bud, teach me the perimeters of your blitz. Now, this is the guy that put the Pittsburgh Steelers together. So trust me, this is one of the most brilliant minds ever. He took me through exactly how he put together a blitz package. I designed my kickoff coverage based on those parameters. Okay, so I got a pretty good start. Then I went to how do I run a return? I thought, well, I'm an offensive line coach. I'm going to turn this into a power off tackle play. So we would double team and trap and set up and all the things that are illegal. You can't do any of them today. We used to kill everybody. Roger Goodell was teasing me a couple of months ago, and he said, Mike, you cannot complain about the rules. He said, we had to change most of them because of you. He said, so you can't complain. He said, the stuff you do, killing people. And it was kind of fun for me. But that's how I did it. I developed a philosophy. And then I always changed. I would change and change and change. And I wrote about some of these things in the book of how I came up with those things. And I had some great stories. I had a great lesson that I learned from Woody Hayes, a great lesson that I learned from Bear Bryant, which is an incredible story. I can't tell them all to you, then nobody will buy the book. But this is how I put together my philosophy of coaching. And then it went from there. And then Don Shula hired me. And believe me, when you go to work for Don Shula in the 1980s, trust me, you're at the top of the totem pole because this guy was the boss. He wasn't the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He was the head coach of the NFL. He ran the show. He was a permanent member on the competition committee. There wasn't a rule. There wasn't a business thing that didn't go through him. And here I'm working for him. Well, I learned a lot. It was a great experience. And I'm very proud of all the guys that ever worked for Don Shula. I'm the only one that ever received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the press. I'm the only one that ever did. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Just real quick, most of the time, the most that you spent in the one team was, if I'm not mistaken, the Jets, correct? 12 years?
No, it was at Miami, 15 years.
15 years.
Yes,
And the Jets
12, 12 with the Jets, 15 with Miami. So I was
Okay.
at Miami the longest.
And you play for different head coaches in New York, though. You only play for one coach in Miami, am I correct?
Well, no, Jimmy Johnson was there with me at the end. When Jimmy Johnson came in after Coach Shula retired, I stayed with Jimmy.
All right,
now when I was in New York, there were 3 coaches. I went there with Herman Edwards, and then I stayed with Eric Mangini, and I stayed with Rex Ryan.
And so you had 3 coaches in New York.
Yes,
and technically, for the most part in Miami, you stayed. You really mostly was with Don Shula for the most part.
Yeah, Jimmy was with 4 years. But
now
Don was a long time. I was with Coach Shula a long time.
You started with the Colts. Who was the head coach of the Colts?
Frank Cush, who had been at Arizona State. Remember, he got released, and then he went to Canadian League at Hamilton. And then Frank was the head coach of the Baltimore Colts.
Correct.
And I was part of the move when we moved from Baltimore at night to Indianapolis. I was in the middle of that mess. But that was a pretty crazy experience.
Well, we're going to get to the book, and we're going to get to other things as well. But I want to really talk about your NFL career before we get to the book.
Sure.
In that move overnight, I know Art Modell was not a popular guy. He was not very liked.
But remember, wait, before you go there, Art Modell was the part of when the Cleveland made the move. This wasn't dealing with Art Modell. This is when the Colts made the move. Robert Irsay was the owner.
Correct. I do apologize.
He was the general manager.
Yes.
Yeah, same type of moves, just different.
Yeah, I got it confused. But
you're those guys. You're pretty close.
When you guys left in the middle of the night, okay, what were you told? That the Baltimore Colts were leaving. It was supposedly a big secret, but then again, here are the cameras watching the trucks roll away. What did they tell you?
Okay, that's a good question. The city of Baltimore had come on hard times. You know, the steel industry had gone down, the textile mills had moved. The city was really not very prosperous. And Baltimore, the stadium was old, the old stadium, it was falling apart. It was a mess. You know, where they used to be had the great teams, but not anymore. And the team was generating less commonly shared money than anyone else in the league. Everybody gets the same amount of money from the television revenue. But then there's the amount of revenue that each team separately generates. Well, Baltimore had nothing, they had zero. So they were on some hard times. And other teams were starting to push toward them. I mean, originally I thought we were going to move to Phoenix. Phoenix was making a move. You know, Jacksonville made a move toward us. Memphis made a move. And then Indianapolis, Eli Lilly, the drug company, they built the old Hoosier Dome. They built the dome. And it's a beautiful stadium sitting there with no team. It's sitting there. So, you know, we thought if we were going to go, it was 5 o'clock at night. The general managers, the owner's son, Jimmy Irsay, came around to our offices and he said, "Tonight, guys, stick around because we're going to have a meeting here like at 6 o'clock or whatever." And everybody else went home. Like, believe me when I'm telling you, everybody didn't get invited. There was coaches, 2 equipment guys, 1 film guy, 2 trainers, and a handful of front office. And I mean a handful, and everybody else went home. And they came in and they said, the trucks are on their way.
To Indianapolis.
From Indianapolis. They've rendezvoused at a stop in the Pennsylvania Turnpike. They said they'll be here tonight. They've got mover. Each truck is equipped with several guys. They put the Mayflower Moving Company, which is headquartered in Indianapolis. They said when they come in, you're going to get it. You get big boxes. Put everything in your office in it. Don't leave the telephone. Everything else goes.
But this was like some kind of secret operation that everybody just.
Well, see, here's the thing. The city of Baltimore owned the building, and the Colts leased it from them. So if the city of Baltimore had shut the door and locked us, then we would have had to go. We could take nothing. So they wanted to take everything that we could, our stuff, our equipment, our weights, our scouting reports, because we had the draft coming up. Our paperwork, our files. So they told us, load everything. Everything in the building was thrown in the boxes and put on trucks and taken away before the sun came up.
And how did the media get a hold of the trucks leaving? Did someone leak it?
Well, there were people that lived not too far away, and they saw the moving trucks. Plus, the rumors had been going around, and they saw the trucks. And next thing you know, there was a crowd outside the gate. I remember I had to drive home, and this crowd stopped my car. I got out, and I told him, I said, "You're arguing with the wrong guy. This isn't my idea." I said, "And I'm going home, so get the hell out of the road. Leave me alone." And it wasn't my fault. I didn't start it. I went home.
All right, so
we were gone. We were gone.
You went from Baltimore to Indianapolis.
Correct.
But the season they started in Indianapolis as the Colts, Indianapolis Colts from Baltimore, in the famous middle of the night move. Were you with the Indianapolis Colts, or did you move on from there?
No, I went with the Colts for 2 seasons.
They were not known as the Baltimore Colts; they were known as Indianapolis.
Correct. I coached the Baltimore Colts 1 year, then we moved, and I coached the Indianapolis Colts 2 years.
Okay, and then from there, you moved on to the Arizona Outlaws of the USFL. Tell me how that came about.
Well, Frank Kush, who had coached at Arizona State, was from Phoenix. And so when they wanted a head coach there, he was the perfect guy. And so he wanted to go back home. So they offered him the job, and he took me with them as his offensive line coach. And then, we started the season, a couple months later. So I went, back-to-back seasons. So I went with them to Phoenix and coached there 1 year. And then I went with Don Shula to the Miami Dolphins and coached. So I coached, season with no break in between. So it was a lot of work for me, but it ended up being a lot of fun.
Tell me the quality of the USFL when you were coaching in '85. It was for 1 season. You obviously coached, you were with Doug Williams, the quarterback.
He was excellent. Don't forget, that's when they were rating the NFL. They rated the draft. Steve Young, USFL. They were loaded. And they took a lot of really good players. Reggie White, USFL. Those guys. I had an offensive line. I had a heck of a group. I had a center named Jerry Sullivan. He had played for the Cleveland Browns for 10 years. I had Tom Thayer, was a guard that had been drafted by Chicago. He started for the Bears when they won the Super Bowl. I had a kid named Alvin Powell, one of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen in my entire career. So I had a heck of a group. We were good. We had a good group of guys, and it was, it was a fun thing. But they kind of outgrew their finances. They didn't have the money to keep it going, and then eventually it disintegrated. But there were a lot of good players there. It was very competitive.
Now, obviously, you had a relationship with Frank Kush. He ended up head coach of Arizona Arizona Outlaws in '85 when they merged with the Oklahoma team. You came in as special teams coach.
No, I was the offensive line.
Offensive line, excuse me.
I'd never coached special teams then.
Right. If the USFL would have kept going, would have stayed, or you would have gone back to the NFL?
That's a good question. What they were really trying to do, and they had, Donald Trump was one of the owners, and there were a couple of guys like him that had some money, and they felt that if they could stick around long enough, they could get some of their teams absorbed into the NFL. That was their goal. The NFL wasn't quite as ready for that as they thought they would be, and it didn't happen. It broke apart. But if they had kept going the way they were, and if they had the finances to do it, I would have been happy to stay. I would have stayed a few years, sure. But they just didn't have the money to pull it off, and eventually it faded and drifted away. It started off with a bang, but then as time went on, it waned, and then it faded.
Okay, and now we go to after Arizona Outlaws USFL. You're with the Dolphins for the next 14 years from '86. 15.
Right.
Tell me, what was your relationship with Don Shula? What kind of a head coach he was? What kind of person? And then, of course, Jimmy Johnson comes towards the end.
Yeah.
Tell me,
Coach
the
Shula
difference.
was looking for a tight ends coach and an offensive line coach, and a special teams coach that could help with the offensive line. And I fit perfectly. I could do them all. So he was coaching the Pro Bowl. They had got knocked out of the playoffs, and Ron Stark, who was the Pro Bowl punter, used to play for me with the Indianapolis Colts, and he highly recommended me. And Coach Shula called me, and next thing you know, I got the job. And with Don, first of all, he was a brilliant football mind. He knew everything. He could walk into any meeting room and take over. He could teach it that well. He knew all parts of the game. He was a tremendous manager of the football game. He knew the rules. He knew how to manage the clock. He knew how to take timeouts. He knew when to challenge. He was just a brilliant guy, and he never stopped learning. He never stopped. I mean, he'd come down the hall, and you'd be praying when he'd come down the hall that he wasn't looking for you, because if he was, you're in trouble. But he was a brilliant coach, and a real challenge to work with. But he forced you to operate at a very high level. And when I got there, it took me a while, but when I got to that point, then it was a great relationship.
Well, guys, for those of you watching right now, we have our special guest, Mike Westhoff, former NFL coordinator for 32 years, Colts, Dolphins, Jets, Saints, USFL, Arizona Outlaws. And we appreciate, of course, him being on. He's promoting his book as well, which we'll get to in a few minutes. And just real quick before I forget, because we have a sponsor. This show is sponsored by Cafe Piazza in St. Louis, 1800 Arsenal Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63118. Again, our guest is Mike Westhoff, author of the Figure Out book, 32 years in the NFL as a special coordinator. Mike, talk about Jimmy Johnson. Tell us his personality. What was it like because I think Jimmy came in with this, hey, I've got experience. I've won at Miami. I won at Dallas. I've done it, or I believe this was before Dallas or after Dallas?
No, after Dallas.
After Dallas. Right. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Jimmy's a very bright person. Jimmy's strengths as a coach, in my opinion, are really his ability to put a football team together. Jimmy's a draft expert. He knows how to procure knowledge in the draft from every individual around him. He does a very good job of that. So he's had a good background of putting a team together. He had a philosophy of how to put a team together and what type of team he had. He got that, and he understood it very well. And he did a nice job doing that. Jimmy was not a great, big, giant X and O guy. I know he could do it, but that wasn't his thing. He was more of the look at the big picture and run the whole team thing. He never called anything with me, or I don't even think.
But what happened? What happened at Miami? What went wrong?
No, it's nothing. Nothing went wrong. Jimmy had done enough. He was ready to move on. He wanted to get into the media. He loved the media. He was ready to do it. He had coached enough. He was ready to move to another part of his life. The hours of the media. He was the coaching. He was ready to move to something different. And he was just prepared. He coached and he finished up there. We had some good years. We were in the playoffs. And but at the end, Jimmy was ready to go. He was ready to go on with the rest of his life to something a little bit different. And he did. And he was in the media. He's still finishing up. He was in the media for 100 years, and he did a nice job. But he was a different coach than Don Shula. They were just different people.
And Mike, tell me, obviously you've been with Miami for so long. You went to how many playoff games and how many Super Bowls?
I never went to a Super Bowl. Never. I was. That's a big confession. I went to five championship games. Lost them all, and so that's pretty tough for me. It could have been 6. So that was devastating for me. That was tough for me. And I know because there's guys that have Super Bowl rings that I can beat with my eyes closed. I just could line up and I know I could beat those guys.
So with Miami,
we were in the playoffs a lot. When I was with Coach Shula, we averaged 10 wins a season, and we were good. The defense had gotten old, and we struck out a little bit there. We kept losing the Buffalo. Buffalo went to 4 Super Bowls, and we were the team that they beat, and that was frustrating because I thought we had Dan Marino was our quarterback, who I believe is as good as ever played the game, and for him not to go, that was a disappointment. Although he's totally the last person responsible for the fact that he didn't go. I don't care what anybody says. He could have taken 20 teams to the Super Bowl. So, but we were good. Coach Shula had coached a long time, and then he retired. Jimmy took over. We were back in the playoffs again. So we were a good team. We weren't ready to knock on the door. Dan was getting toward the end of his career, and Jimmy was kind of getting toward the end of his career. And then the Dolphins were ready to move in another direction.
And once the Dolphins were getting ready to move to another direction, how did you end up with the Jets, the New York Jets?
Okay, that's pretty simple. When Jimmy Johnson left, I'll just be right on. I'm not going to. There's names I'm not going to mention because, to tell you the truth, I won't mention the guy's name. I just won't do it. Like I can't deal with it. When Jimmy left, I should have gotten the job. The job should have been mine. I didn't get it. Dan wanted me to get the job because they wanted Dan to retire. I was going to keep Dan Marino. I had a friend of mine who was a coach with the Indianapolis Colts. I was going to bring him to coach our offense and put in the Peyton Manning offense for Dan Marino at the end of his career. Dan would have thrown for 5,000 yards. We had the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, and I had the number 1 ranked special teams. I should have been the head coach, but I didn't get it. And, sometimes we don't get everything in life, and I didn't get it. I was very disappointed. They gave it to a guy who, to tell you the truth, I don't want to talk about him because I just don't want to talk about him. He makes me want to get sick, so I won't do it. But and then I left. I got fired that next year. I had the best special teams unit in the NFL. I had the highest ranking special teams unit probably ever in the history of the NFL, in the history. And that year, after that, back in those days, as a group, our peers, we used to elect the coach of the year. I got unanimously elected by my peers as the coach of the year, and I got fired. So, and that was the bad news, but the good news, I went to the Jets, and I absolutely loved it.
How did the Jets contact you?
Well, I saw Herman Edwards at the Senior Bowl. He was up there. He had just gotten the job. It was his first job. He knew of me. He knew who I was, and we sat and talked. And he hired me in 2 minutes. And I went up to New York. And I took the job, and I loved every minute of it. And that was a great thing. One of the best times in my entire life. My years in New York.
Well, one thing that I noticed in one of the videos I found where they show you, Phil Simms made a great point where in the NFL back then, they didn't give credit to the people behind the scenes, the people that actually did the hard work to set up
to a degree.
Yeah, special teams, the offensive line. Back then in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they didn't talk that much about them. And so in this video that I'm going to show you, and I want you to see this, the reason that it kind of mind boggles me because it was just more than just the quarterback or the head coach or the defensive coach. There was stuff in between that these announcers and unfortunately the NFL in general back then didn't pay attention to. But let me show you this.
Special teams, we don't talk about it enough in broadcast, and we don't give it enough credence. And look what's happened today. Just look at some of the numbers. Punters are good. Return yards, the Colts 152. This is pretty even. This the field position.
Now you see right there, Phil Simms is saying we don't pay attention enough to it.
Sure.
And what do you think? Nowadays, everything's dissected with social media and everything else. Everything's dissected, obviously. But explain to the football fans and the audience out there what makes the special teams special? What makes it different? Why is it so important? And why should people care other than, here we go, they're just going to kick off or punt?
Well, first of all, it's dramatically changed.
Okay.
And I mean dramatically. So back when I first started, basically special teams was just a matter of putting some things together, lining a few guys up, and doing some things. And then a few of us came along, and all of a sudden started to become a little bit creative. There was two things that really helped me. Number one, I walked into a job where there was very little innovation, and there was absolutely zero regulation. So you could do anything. You just had to try it.
True.
Now, a lot of it became outlawed and illegal and all that, okay. But you could do anything. Then it got to the point where it became a really highlight of the game every week. My name was, I was talking about on TV every single week, every week. So, because we were good, we made a difference. Then some rule changes began to mitigate some things, and you didn't have as many plays. I'll give you an exact example. Remember this now when I'm going to tell you this, because it's a good point. My first 30 years in the National Football League, 30 years, all right? Not counting PATs and field goals, not counting those plays, whether you kicked them or defending them. I averaged 22 plays a game, 22. All right, I'm talking about punts, punt returns, kickoff. Back then, every kickoff was covered or returned. So I averaged 22 plays a game. My last 2 years in the National Football League, when I was with the Saints, that's those same statistics, 7. I averaged 7 plays. That's it. See, I'm not counting a kickoff that blasts out of the end zone. And I'm 74. I could run down on that, please.
Well,
so I went from 22 to 7. So now a role is dramatically different. I get calls every year. Why don't you come back? What am I going to do? What am I going to teach? Everything I used to teach is illegal today, so forget about it. I'm staying home. I'm going to write about when it was at its very highest, and it'll never go back.
Well, speaking of being creative, I want to show our audience. This was one of the videos I found that, again, it was against the Colts.
Okay.
And I want to show this video about how creative you were when it came to the special teams. Watch this.
Well, onside kick, and it's taken by the Jets at the 43-yard line.
Boy, did the Colts get caught sound asleep with that. But you couldn't execute that thing any better than that. That ball must have driven, Nugent must have driven that ball 30, 40 feet into the air.
Special teams coach Mike Westhoff makes his presence felt.
Now, back then, you normally don't expect an onside kick till like when you're behind. This was at the beginning of the game, like you're up 7, you're tied 7-7, and you decide to take a risk. Now, I believe Mangini was the coach. When it came to special plays like that, who decided, okay, you know what, Mike, we're gonna do a onside kick? Or is it, hey, Mike, what do you think we should do? Can you tell us what took place before that kick?
Never did that happen with me, ever. Never. I called every single one.
So that was your idea?
They never came to me. I went to them. I told them, I said, I'm getting onside kick here. Get ready.
And
every time. Nobody ever argued with me, because I knew if we did it right, we'd get it. But we did it better than anybody ever did it in history. Better. And when we did it in Miami with Lindo Mari, every time he hit the right kick, we were 100%. When he hit, there was one time he hit bad kick, we didn't get it. I did it. I called it. The thing was, I knew that we could get it. We had practiced it. All we had to do is hit the right kick. We were going to get it. So those are all things that even when I was at the Saints, we ran all those fake punts. Sean Payton didn't call him. He let me call it. But yet he knew that if I did it, we were going to get it because we were really prepared. If they weren't in the right defense, we'd check out and do something else. So, you always have a safety guard to get out of it. But something like that, nah, that was easy. I actually done that all the time. We got him. We were going to get it. No, I called it. No one else. Me.
To all our viewers, this is Mike Westhoff, NFL coordinator for 32 years. And he was with the Colts, the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Saints. Just so you know, this show is sponsored by Cafe Piazza. Got to do the plug-in. in St. Louis, Missouri, 1900 Arsenal Street in St. Louis, Missouri, 63118. Again, our special guest is Mike Westhoff, author of the book Figure It Out, which we're going to get to. And now I want to show a couple of quick highlights before we get to the book. And Mike, I really appreciated your career. I really didn't know so much about it until I saw the videos. But let me show
the book. Buy the book, you'll love it.
I will. Let me show this highlight real quick.
Finally across the 40 into Colts territory, and the special teams unit, which has suffered so badly for the Jets the last few years, gets a boost on opening day. 48-yard punt, 33-yard return, and we'll be back. Chad Morton returns a punt 33 yards, and it already eclipses any punt return the Jets had last year. That's why Mike Westhoff is now in as the special teams coach.
Now, Mike, I noticed that that was your first year with the Jets, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And you had a guy named Morton, who was a pretty good kick returner.
Yeah, he's the running back coach for the Seattle Seahawks right now.
Tell us about Morton. Tell us about what players did you connect with in that first year that you were with the Jets? Just out of curiosity.
That's an interesting question. I thought when I came to the Jets that they were a very good football team. Now, one thing Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick know how to do, they know how to put a team together. This was a good team. I mean, these guys were good. And so Chad Morton was a great return guy for me. Mike Tannenbaum did a really nice job getting him there. It's one of the few kind things I'm going to say about Mike. He did a good job on that one. He did a really nice job getting him there. Chris Hayes was a great player for me. James Dirk, the long snapper I loved, was there for a long time. And there was a good group of linebackers, James Darling and some guys like that we had that were really good. Chris Hayes was one of my all-time favorite players. He was a safety, played for me. Chris became a great return guy. The next year in our opening game, he ran the 2 kickoff returns back in the game, one in overtime to win the game. I would argue the best special teams game ever played in NFL history. And we had a good group. It took a little while because I was brand new. I was trying to find some guys. I didn't know everybody. But and of course, we experienced 9/11. We had to fight through that, and then won that great game out in Oakland to get us into the playoffs. And so it was a really fun time trying to get to know some people and develop, and then kind of develop my mantra, which I would carry with me the rest of the time.
And shout out to Chris. Let me show you real quick. Shout out to Chris. Mike loves the show.
Oh, thank you. And he's talking to you. He's not talking to me.
He's talking to all of us. He said the most underrated football documentary out there, Who Needs 30 for 30? The most underrated football documentary. I don't know what he's talking about, but
he's talking for you guys. He said, "Who needs 30 for 30?"
Okay.
Just watch your show.
Thank you, Chris. But let's get to the book, Mike. First of all, you, if I'm not mistaken, you told me you wrote this during the pandemic. Perfect time to write it.
Yes.
But tell me, first of all, what made you write this book? Number one, what made you write this book? And number two, what is the main premise of this book? If someone buys this book, what do they plan to read? That's what I want.
That's a good question. That's a good way to ask.
Thank you.
No, it absolutely is. I sat in your seat for a while. That's good. Pretty good question. No, what I want people to do, I want them to understand a part of the game that started basically from nowhere and then built to a point of prominence, and then kind of now has faded off a little bit, and it's not quite doesn't quite have that amount of not importance. That's not the right word to use, but that amount of plays, and it's just not as paramount. But what I want, is to figure it out. This is not a book about the $160 million quarterback. This is a book about the guy that comes out of nowhere, stood in those huddles right there that you're looking at, and look at me drawing those plays up. And all of a sudden, that guy who nobody knew made the team and helped win games and basically changed the game. We changed. I mean, Roger Goodell said that. He made that quote on my book that Mike Westhoff changed the game. I think I did. but I could help change their lives. I didn't care. I didn't care how big anybody was. I didn't want to hear it. I remember Woody Hayes told me one time, I got to know him pretty well, and he said, Coach, don't ever let a number, any number, high, low, whatever, make up your mind as to who's a football player. So when I went out to Texas Tech back in the mid 1990s to work out Zach Thomas, I was the only coach. There were some scouts, but I was the only coach. The day I was there, he was 5'10" and a half, and he weighed 223 pounds. He's going in the Hall of Fame. He'll go in the Hall of Fame. So I don't care how big he was. I knew we had to have him. I wanted him. And Jimmy helped him, Jimmy Johnson. We got together, and he stuck with what I was recommending, and we got it. So I had a whole group of those kind of guys, and I loved it. And we got together, we became very creative, and did a million different things, and we were extremely, extremely physical. If you read the book, you'll hear them talk about it, because we interviewed the players. It's in their language, so trust me, it's X-rated now. They swear, but we were so tough. Our goal was that we played everything clean. I never taught hitting above the shoulder or below the knee. But our goal, we were going to knock the hell out of you. We were going to be the most physical team. I wanted, I have a philosophy. I'm a psychology major, and I read a lot. And when Franklin Roosevelt was president of the United States, he made a statement that he wanted his career to be judged by the enemies he made. Not his personality. He didn't have to be a nice guy. His career. I felt the same way. I didn't care if I had any friends. In the NFL, I didn't like anybody. And they didn't like me. I didn't care. They thought I was arrogant, and I was cocky, and I was whatever, because I was. But when I got done, they realized I was actually a pretty good guy and a good friend. And I had the deepest respect for them. But there were guys that coached in the NFL. I'd rather beat them than go to heaven. I mean, I say that with no disrespect, man, because I'm pretty religious, but I was only kidding. I had to tell God that. But anyway, I wanted to beat everybody. And I wanted our guys to think when we came on the field, look out, because we were going to win the damn game. That was my goal.
And how long did it take you to write this book, Figure It Out?
Almost 3 years, not quite, 2.5.
And when was it finished?
I finished it. When did I finish it? I finished it probably about a year ago. Not quite a year ago. Yeah. Now I went through finding the publisher. I got a hold of these guys at Mascot Books, and then I had talked to a number of publishers, and it was very interesting because so many of them were like, Mike, we think it'll be good. We like the book, but we don't know. We don't know how much to pay you. And I told them finally. I said, look, let me explain something to you. I'm Mike Westhoff. I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I'm not a famous writer. I said, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to bet on myself. I don't want one penny. I don't want one penny up front. I said, matter of fact, I'll help pay for some of the printing, but I'm going to negotiate what I'm going to make on each book. I'm going to negotiate a fair price. And I'll bet on myself. I'll bet on myself that I can find a way when people read this. The idea is just be creative, be innovative, and don't stop. Don't stop. I did a lot of this while I was going through so many medical issues that I had to deal with, and I just kept doing it. Yeah, you saw I had a cane, and I had a big leg brace. I didn't care. I could care less. I don't have that now. I move around pretty good. I went through cancer. I dealt through all that, and that's what I hope people will get out of it. They're going to see the average guy that did tremendous in the best business. In my opinion, I'll be arrogant about this. The best business in America. The NFL is the best business in the country.
Now, let me ask you: did you keep a diary throughout the years, or was this all by memory?
Believe it or not, it was all by memory.
You never kept a diary?
No, I did not. What I do have a diary on, I kept it on motivational things that I used in my career to motivate. But I didn't use that at all. But what I did do is when I would go into certain teams and things, I would go into the computer to make sure I had scores correct, to make sure I had the right names. I did that. I would do that. But what happened, I wrote it totally from memory, and I wrote it by longhand.
And throughout the years of your NFL coaching career, who would you say you were the closest or the player you admired the most, whether it was their work ethic or whatever the case may be, that we might read in the book itself?
Oh, boy. That's really tough. I'm going to have to – I could pick 10 guys. I could pick 10. I mean, Taysom Hill with the Saints, he hadn't even played a game when I went down there. I got him going. That's a great story. Found him. Larry Izzo's a good story. Larry Izzo's a little linebacker. He was at Rice University. I talked about him. A friend of mine that I used to know from high school knew his parents. And he called me and said, Coach, could you take a look at this kid? So I talked to some of our scouts. They said, Mike, forget it. He can't play. He's too small. He's not a linebacker. He's not a safety. He can't play. So I went down there. I ended up at Rice, and I worked him out. When I was there, he was 5'9.5". He weighed 213 pounds. He played 13 years in the NFL. He went to 4 Pro Bowls. He has 4 Super Bowl rings. He's the coordinator, special teams coordinator with Seattle Seahawks. Well, I guess he figured it out. I don't care how big he was. He was a good player. Guys like that. Bernie, if I had to pick one, Chris Hayes is maybe one of my closest guys that I loved because of what he did. But it might have to be Bernie Parmalee.
I remember him. Yes.
I'll tell a real quick story. I'll make it quick because I don't want to give away everything. When I was we signed him at the Miami Dolphins as a running back out of Ball State University. Mm-hmm. Good kid. But, he just was having trouble making our team, and we released him. Well, then a couple guys got hurt, and we brought him back. And then we cut him again. And then we brought him back again. And I loved him. Well, now we released him toward the end of the year, and I went up to his room down at the St. Thomas University in Miami. And I talked to our security guy. I said, don't take him home till tomorrow afternoon. Now, I could not do this today because this is 2022. But back then, you could pull this off in the late 80s. Our general manager, Charlie Winter, every day at 1 o'clock would send a fax to the NFL office with our transactions. Now it's all done by computer, and everybody sees everything. But back then, I told Bernie, I want you to come to practice tomorrow. He said, Coach, they cut me. I said, so what? I said, I told the equipment guy to leave your stuff in the locker. I said, nobody knows you. You're a rookie from Ball State. They don't even know who the hell you are. I said, Coach Shula's going to be up front talking to Marino. He's not paying attention to you. I said, now, they're not going to take you home for the afternoon. He said, Coach, they cut me. I said, I don't care. I said, I'm going to take a chance. Go to practice.
Just show up. Nobody knows who you are.
I said, I said, put your helmet on and hide. Now you ought to read when he tells the story, not just me, he tells it too in the book. And there he is back there hiding. That first period, my period. In the last play of the period, I told the field to clear. I said, this is live. I want it live. I told Reggie Roby, our great punter, I said, Reggie, hit me one down the middle that I know I can get a return. He said, okay, I'll do it for you. Boom. You would have thought, if you heard the way he hit this guy, you would have thought there's an automobile accident. Bernie probably hit this kid so hard. Now I'm screaming. I'm going like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. And Coach Shula, I can't repeat what he said to me. I can't even tell you. Woo! What the blah, 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 are you doing? But the running back coach, he and Coach Shula, Carl Passif, they were college roommates. And Carl didn't really like Bernie. And Carl came screaming at me. And I'm yelling. I told him, shut up, get away. And Coach Shula said to Carl, Carl, why don't you shut up for a minute? He said, maybe you ought to give the kid a chance. And he looked at me and he said, I'll talk to you after practice. I thought, my career's over. I'm getting fired. I'm done. So he came up to me after practice. And I said, Coach, I knew we weren't going to turn him in till 1 o'clock today. So I took a chance. I wanted to have one more shot. And he said, you might be the craziest SOB that I've ever. He said, you could get yourself fired for doing that.
Well, they trusted you, obviously, because they let you get away with it.
Coach Shula, for whatever else he was, trust me when I'm telling you, he was a tough guy. He loved tough kids. He said to me, all right, Mike, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I'm sending him home today. He said, you're lucky you're not going with him. He said, I'm going to bring him back and we'll put him on the practice squad. So he's back on the practice squad. Halfway through the year, we were going up to play the Jets. And Coach Shula came to my office. He said, Mike, if I activate Bernie, where will you play him? And I told him, play him on all these things, da, 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 da. Well, he activated him, and he finished a 9-year career.
Wow.
So I'm pretty proud of that.
No, and again,
but Coach Shula,
it's a gutsy
he
call.
wanted to kill me, but he knew that I wasn't going to get anybody in trouble. We didn't do anything illegal because we hadn't really released anybody yet. But I took a chance, and it worked. And I guess the players knew that I could do anything for them. But don't make a mistake, but I might be just as hard going the other way.
Right.
I can be pretty tough. But I loved him, and he ended up being a great, great player. And now he's the running back coach at Jacksonville.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Pro Football Alliance. Our special guest is Mike Westhoff, former NFL coordinator, 32 years for the Colts, the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Saints. I have to tell you once again, this show is sponsored by Cafe Piazza in St. Louis, Missouri, 1900 Arsenal Street in St. Louis. Author of the book of Figure It Out. Mike, when is this book going to be available? And where can people find it once it is?
Okay, it's available right now. Actually, you can get it now. It'll be out in July, or you can get it in July at Barnes & Noble or Amazon anyway. But right now you can go into the author, the publishers, that they're called Mascot, MASCOT, Mascot Books. Mascot Books. You go into mascotbooks.com, and it'll tell you to hit the search. You put in the title, Figure It Out. And then my book will come up just like you're seeing on your screen. It'll come up, and you can buy it right now, and they'll deliver it right to your house. They'll deliver it right now. And so you can buy a soft cover or hardcover. The hardcover is a little more expensive. The soft cover is about a paperback. I mean, it's 400 pages. I spent some time on this book. There's pictures, there's interviews. I'm extremely proud of it. The players loved it because they had a chance to tell their side of the story. And I think it's a great story. People are going to look at it and they're going to say to themselves, that's the same thing that I had to do in my business to be successful. And that's what I want people to be able to realize. We don't all have everything. Everybody's not the most gifted athlete. Some of us are just kind of average guys that maybe have things we have to deal with in our lives. I mean, I had to fight through cancer, and I never missed a day of work. I never missed a day. And I've had 10 surgeries that lasted over 10 hours each one. So, wow. I'll stand up with anybody when it comes to that.
Wow.
I'm like a permanent resident at Sloan Kettering in New York. And so, you just do what you have to do. And the idea is what you have to do is you figure it out. And that's what I did. And that's what these players did. And I think we did it. I know the coaches will hate me, but I think we did it better than anybody ever did it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the book is called Figure It Out. My 32-year journey while revolutionizing pro football special teams by Mike Westhoff, special coordinator for the NFL for 32 years. Again, the Colts, the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Saints. The book will be available in July everywhere, Amazon everywhere. But right now, as Mike said, correct me if I'm wrong, mascot.com?
Yes, mascotbooks.com.
Mascotbooks.com.
Put in the title, Figure It Out, and they'll deliver it to your house.
All right. Now, Mike, I want to cover something that I found an interesting picture. Now, you work for 3 head coaches in New York, correct?
Yes.
It was Herman Edwards, Mangini,
Eric Mangini,
and then
Rex Ryan.
I was about to show the picture, but I got a curious question. If you look at this picture, there's a certain individual that's in this picture that's got my curiosity. And if you can tell me something about him and what happened in New York with this guy in the few minutes that we got left. Here we go. Look at this. Oh, sorry. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm going to Did you see the guy all the way to the right?
Yeah, Tim Tebow.
Can you explain to me what happened with Tim in New York? And was he just a what's the word I'm looking for? Not to be disrespectful, but was he more like a sideshow? Was he taken seriously? What was going on with Tim Tebow?
That's an interesting point. You bring up a very touchy subject. Tim Tebow was, Heisman Trophy winner as a quarterback at the University of Florida.
Correct.
And very much deservedly so. But Tim Tebow, as an NFL quarterback, was very marginal at best. And when we got him, we brought him in, the idea that he would kind of be like a hybrid type player. He would do a little bit of everything. I would use him on my punt team because he would be so good running fakes, and he was excellent at it. He did a great job. I personally really liked him. I loved him. Our offensive guys did not like him. They were not. He was not. They just didn't. They didn't really believe in him, and they never had any packages in for him. I was very disappointed at how that was handled. I thought that was unfair. I thought Tim would be good if they bring him in as like a wildcat quarterback, or bring him in to, mix him up the different plays in the game. He could be a receiver. He could do some things. He was not a. Some people tried to compare him to Taysom Hill. They're totally different players. I think Taysom's a much more talented guy. And Taysom Hill,
are you saying Tim never had a shot within the NFL? He was more like a sideshow?
No, he was not a sideshow. Remember, he was a starting quarterback at Denver. When it came time to be the starting NFL quarterback, his skills were lacking. He did not have the great throwing skills. He just didn't have it. His release was slow. It wasn't real quick. And then we were going to use him as a multi-purpose guy, but we did not do it. I did it. I'm the only one who did it. I upheld my end of the bargain. Everybody else, I don't think they did. I think it was a shame, and it was a mistake on our staff. And it took away a little bit from our team, because Tim Tebow's a good man. He's a good guy. Is he a great player? No, he's not. And at the highest level, he's definitely not. He's just not. But if we would have used him in a correct fashion, he would have been a plus for our football team. He would have been a plus. He had gained some weight. He was going to run the ball and be that wildcat quarterback. I think we would have been very happy. We did not do it, and the whole thing was a mess. But it was not Tim Tebow. It wasn't completely his fault. It really was not. It's the way it went, and it was very much mishandled.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today was Mike Westhoff, author of the book Figure It Out, my 32-year journey while revolutionizing pro football special teams. It will be available everywhere on Amazon.com and everywhere else. Right now, it's available where again, Mike? Mascot what?
It's just Mascot Books.
MascotBooks.com.
MASCOT, Mascot Books. You put in the title, and you can buy it through them. If you you can actually order it anywhere now, but you won't get it till July. But Mascot Books, you might get it tomorrow.
We appreciate you joining us, Mike. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you. Hopefully, once the book is already out, hey, we can invite you back and talk some more football, because we got 32 years to cover. Okay.
It'll be fun. You were great. I'll do it in a minute. It was really fun. It was a good experience. I had a lot of fun doing it. So thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us, guys. This is the Pro Football Alliance Show, and we'll see you next week.
Onside kick, and it's taken by the Jets at the 43-yard line.
Boy, did the Colts get caught sound asleep with that. But you couldn't execute that thing any better than that. That ball Nugent must have driven that ball 30, 40 feet into the air.
Special teams coach Mike Westhoff makes